Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about lead engineers. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, do you think it's practical to make only lead engineers approve code reviews in a large development team of 35 developers and 4 leads when hundreds of files are changed every day? That is going to be tricky. If you can find 4 lead developers, or like a lead developer who's willing to just sit and do code reviews all day long, then yeah, sure, that makes sense, right? But it sort of comes down to the composition for me. So I argue, and this is just my personal opinion, I argue that the future of programming is actually going to be very close to what you're describing. I'm not saying that you're going to have like lead developers only do code reviews, because we're sort of already doing that in some areas. Some people are doing it, some people are not. Most people are not doing it. You have like just some other developer doing it. The reason why we do it that way is because currently there is a trend, and that trend is called agile work practices. And unfortunately, we are yet to arrive at this conclusion, because we're still very much a democratic society, and everything is very, everybody's equal, etc., etc. When the reality is usually that you have different levels of skill of software developers. And the thing is, the problem with having the lead developers do all the code reviews is that it's fundamentally going to, one part, cause a situation where they have to basically do nothing else because they have no time to do anything else. It's actually no different from being a manager. And if you ask anyone in middle management if they feel like what their number one problem is, it is that they have no time to do any work because they're in meetings all the time. And the lead developers have the exact same problem. They're in meetings all the time, or they're in code reviews in this scenario all the time. They have nothing else to do. And for the average software developer, that's actually not that fun. So it's hard to kind of swing that. It becomes hard to scale, and it's actually the exact same problem with managers. It's hard to scale a company due to the fact that you create these bottleneck people who know sort of everything and so forth. And then let's not forget that lead developers, they have to code as well in order to keep their skills up to date. And then you have bad lead developers and you have really good software developers, and what happens then? Well, it's that conformity thing, and that's why we currently favor these agile practices where everybody's sort of equal and like doing their, like you usually have a rule for code reviewing back and forth and so forth. The reason why that is because it makes people more autonomous, and autonomy is for some reason the biggest buzzword in IT, where everybody's just about, oh, we're all going to be like autonomous, cross-functional, etc., etc., and they don't really always they never talk about like what the issues with that is. But what my belief is that the demand for software developers of high skill it's just increasing, but we cannot meet that supply. It's never going to happen, because fundamentally the best software developers in the world are passionate people who are in it for more than just the money, and that is a minority. Trust me when I say that is a minority of software developers. Truly passionate, driven people are rare, and it's not something that you find in the average consultancy. You can't buy it as readily as you would like. But you still need them, because without them you're left with software developers who some of them are subpar and some of them are really good, but they don't really care about like big perspective types of things, and they don't commit to the companies and so forth. Because it is a talent industry. This is a talent industry. It's very much down to how well, as a company, if you want to succeed, you cannot just look at software developers as like this economic thing. Like, it's not like just having a construction worker who is paid to lift some boxes or to like set up a fence. These are creative people who are inventing the future for your company. They are the ones who are building everything. Without their creativity, hunger, and desire to be very useful, you have no way of knowing what they're building for you and whether or not that's going to work in 10 years or 5 years or something like that. And that's where legacy and all that stuff comes in. So what my belief is that people will start to realize that there is no model today that scales, but the model where you have lead developers who are directly involved in all the code reviews, all the major decisions, and like work close to the team, or who are senior veterans who share their knowledge with less experienced developers. It is the only model today. I'll talk about what I think is lacking in that structure, but it is the only model today that a software company can use in order to scale fast enough, because you will not be able to find an entire company, or like usually enough, it's very unlikely that you're going to find enough senior software developers who are like super talented and like so forth. And sure, if your products are simple and you have the right management structure and everything, you know, all the stars align, you don't have to have that sort of structure. But having a lead software developer, or someone who is extremely experienced, or an architect or someone like that. I'm not saying an architect like in the traditional sense, but having people who are really good involved in the code reviews and making sure that everything is moving towards some type of vision is key for you to have a sustainable future as an IT company. And this model is the only model that I know of that works. So if you have tech leads or lead developers or architects or so forth who are not working right next to the other software developers, who are doing code reviews and doing all the same stuff, like they're 50-50 split between management or like whatever they're doing and coding, you are going to have this problem of code quality and so forth, because the reality is that you have to train software developers. It takes time to take a junior up to a mid-level, or a mid-level up to a senior and so forth. And trust me, the mid-levels are not perfect. I mean, heck, the seniors are not perfect, so it's extremely complicated. The thing that is lacking, I believe, is the culture part of the structure, because the goal of any decent lead developer should be to minimize the amount of coding that is necessary, or customization, custom coding that is necessary for the software developers. What do I mean by that? Well, examples of that would be, you know, those IT companies who build products that you all use, like Google making Kubernetes, for example. Kubernetes started as an in-house project, if I remember correctly. It was called Borg or something like that. Facebook creates React, Google creates Angular, etc., etc. Like there are tons of examples of internal tools that grow into full-scale products. Now, that is what I believe is the future. It kind of ties into my thoughts on like serverless and so forth, that the only sustainable way for us to continue growing at the rate that we're doing in IT is to simplify the development process. And you simplify the development process by having, in my opinion at the very least, highly skilled, passionate developers in a position of power where their job, their focus is to create a scalable framework for development that can be understood and maintained by lesser skilled developers. That is the thing that I believe is the future. This is an example of that, where you have senior, extremely experienced software developers who have hands-on knowledge. They can do all the coding if you need them to, but you don't want them to just do the code, and they should coach and help and so forth and build SDKs. I like to call my thoughts on this as basically SDK-driven development. A lot of the big companies do exactly that. Amazon does it, Google does it, Facebook does it, Microsoft does it. I was talking the other day to a guy at Spotify. They do it as well. Like, they create in-house SDKs for the other development teams that basically abstracts away some of the customized coding that they have to do, and they provide package deals for the different teams when they create new products. There's a template for how to spin up the project. They have to like set, you know, they don't have to do any of the extra plumbing. And when you create a good enough work framework that fits your model for how you want to do business, and you have the right experienced people who maintain those projects, you can get away with getting people who are just basically juniors. You can mass hire, you could in theory mass hire juniors if you wanted to, or mid-levels and so forth. You don't have to be so concerned with that. You have to have the best software developer at the keyboard at all times, because you have invested in standardized tools and processes that are being maintained by people that have that level of skill. And when you do that, you can actually scale to a much larger size on mid-levels and juniors than you could possibly do by just trying to find seniors. And that is what I believe is the future. So the thing that you're doing right now, I think it will work and it will continue to work, but if you want it to scale, that should be the focus of your tech leads. Your tech leads should create their own little team, or like their own little sphere, or like you have these cross-functional teams that are supporting, if that makes sense. And their job should be to talk to your stakeholders, to really have this holistic understanding of your business and create solutions that make the code reviews like a snap. I've done this 100 times, guys, where we create standardized things that, it takes. We build the thing once and then we can reuse it forever because it's already been designed to be reusable. But in order for you to get to that level, you have to have the right people. And that's why I keep telling people that having the right senior level experience in a company enables you to grow the entire company on basically just juniors and mid-levels if you have the right senior. So what I want you to take away from this is that I believe that it's not sustainable usually for you just to have quote unquote leads to do code reviews and so forth, because they're going to become bottlenecks really, really quickly, and most of them are probably going to get really bored with just doing code reviews because they're going to do nothing but that for quite some time. So what most companies do is that they allow it doesn't matter who does the code review, you just have to have someone do the code review. The problem with that is that when you have a junior doing a code review, that's a whole different thing than having a senior doing the code review, and you're going to get a lot of slip-throughs of quote-unquote bad code. And that's why I believe in that the future of IT, or the future of our entire way of working, it comes down to doing this exact thing. Serverless is an example of what I'm talking about. The philosophy behind serverless is to remove the noise from the development process and boil it down to just implementing a function. And you can get a college student to do that job if you have the right infrastructure around it. If you have the SDKs, if you have already made clients for connecting to data and storage and so forth, and they know the basics of coding, you can give that job to a junior level software developer and then let a senior level software developer review that code, because the amount of reviewing that has to happen is so minor. Because if you have 100 files a day changing, then you're never going to be able to scale that by having just a few select seniors review that code. But if it's 100 files and it's like a one-line change or like a very minor change in each of them, that's a whole different story. Have a great day.